Today we're going to save up to $270 on a remote control for our boat's windlass. Greetings sailors, and welcome to a new episode of The Low Cost Sailor. Today we're going to set up a remote control for the windlass on our boat. What's the electric windlass? The windlass is that gadget we've got on the bow of the boat that allows us to collect the chain and the anchor. In most modern boats, it tends to be electric. It's usually the first winch to become electrified because it's the heaviest thing, and it's a task we have to undertake quite frequently, without exception. So what are we going to do today? Usually when you install an electric windlass, it comes with the main block and a pair of buttons next to the windlass that let us haul up the chain and let it down. This means we've got to stick close to him while we're conducting the operation, which is usually a piece of cake when we've got a crew, but when you're solo sailing, it's an entirely different ballgame because you might have to keep an eye on the engine, battle the wind, get the boat positioned just right, and all that jazz. So what we're going to set up today is a remote control that lets us operate that electric winch from anywhere on the boat, so we can raise and lower the anchor anytime we desire. An electric windlass runs about $600. Thankfully, this particular boat already had one, and that's not what we're focusing on today. If y'all don't have an electric winch, this might not be your video, but if you do have an electric winch and want to get a bit more bang for your buck, especially without spending much dough, this is your video. Remote controls for electric winches are indeed relatively common, but they usually don't come as a standard feature. I'm not exactly sure why, but considering that the electric winch costs around $600, a remote control usually goes for about $250 to $300. Well, with those prices, it makes sense it doesn't come standard. What we'll do today is install a remote for the electric windlass, spending less than $15. The options for remote controls for our windlass out there on the market are super broad and all legit. If you've got enough dough, you can snag one of those fancy ones from big brands, with a chain meter counter, whatever that suits you. There are wired ones that are ridiculously expensive cables, I don't know why, because it's just a one controller cable with 2 buttons, or more wallet-friendly options like the one we're going to check out today, which is the reason for our setup and fits way better with our channel's vibe. We picked a super cheap option, only set us back $12 from one of our go-to suppliers, AliExpress. So come on, let's check it out. So actually, this is precisely what we've got, and here's what we can discover inside. We're going to take a closer look at a couple of remote controls, perhaps just a tad bigger than they appeared in the pictures, but that's going to happen quite frequently with stuff from AliExpress. They've got 2 buttons for going up and down, and a switch to turn them on. Every single time you hit the switch, the light comes on, clearly indicating it comes with batteries included. It's one of those special 12-volt batteries, designed specifically for remotes. So those are the 2 remotes. I'm telling you, they're a bit oversized for my liking, but hey, we'll see how they feel when we actually start using them. And then, on top of that, the controller kicks in with 12 volts at 433 megahertz. That's the frequency it's broadcasting on. You've got a couple of wires that look like they're for power, the antenna, which is just a wire, a pair of wires for controlling the solenoid, and finally some instructions. Looks like we hit the jackpot this time, because they're not in Chinese but in English, detailing the device's specs, how to hook it up in different ways, what each wire is for, and where it connects. And lastly, a troubleshooting guide to figure out what's up, or the likely reasons something might go wrong when we set it up. But let's not wait any longer. Let's see how easy or hard this installation turns out to be. The first thing we're going to need to do is find a way to get to our windlass motor so that we can access the wiring and proceed with the installation. In our case, the access is actually located in the bow cabin, so once we've found it, we'll simply carefully remove the cover and then check out the wiring. Basically, when we pop the hood, what we're looking at is the solenoid with the wires coming from the battery and the wires heading out to the engine, and at the same time, 3 blue wires for controlling the solenoid. We can easily fire up the solenoid from the outside using the buttons that already come with it, one to raise and another to lower it down. To be able to run tests and work comfortably, the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to carefully free up the winch chain so we can use it and thoroughly test it without having to haul the anchor up and down. Doing that is quite simple. We just let the chain go and check that the windlass spins freely now when we press the buttons up or down. Just to be safe, before messing with any wires, let's always remember to unplug the battery, and then we'll have to carefully hook it back up for our tests. In our particular case, we'll begin by completely ditching a control box from an outdated remote that the boat had previously utilized. We carefully yanked it out, snipped the wires, and liberated the connections to seamlessly hook up the new box. Since we don't have much info on the wiring setup, we're gonna run some tests to see how it works. We can thoroughly check out the battery input, the blue connectors for the control wires. Those are precisely the ones that'll let us efficiently turn the solenoid on or off, and importantly, the two black wires for the motor output, which are going to be the ones actively feeding the motor. So, we could say that the current setup precisely matches the following layout. As we can see, when we press either of the two buttons, what it does is feed 12 volts from the battery directly into one or the other of the solenoid control lines. What this process effectively does is generate precisely 12 volts at the output that goes to the motor, with the polarity being one way or the other, depending on the setup. Let's go ahead and see how the control circuit of our remote behaves. So we're gonna feed it with a 12 volt power supply, which is gonna be more convenient than plugging it straight into the battery. In our specific case, we're going to use our compact power supply, which runs off a power bank, and perhaps we'll dedicate an entire episode to discussing the gear we utilize in our work on the boat. Depends on how picky y'all are. You can either wear gloves or not. I put them on because I've been messing with the chain that's all greasy. By carefully examining the instructions, we can accurately determine what each of the wires is intended for. The red and black wires precisely match up with the module's power supply and will go to the battery's positive and negative terminals, respectively. So, we'll carefully hook them up to our dedicated power source. The yellow and white wires will precisely match up with the 12 volt output that our sophisticated remote control is going to give us. If we carefully hook up our multimeter to the yellow wire, we can clearly see that when we press the in button, we indeed get exactly 12 volts appearing on the wire. If we carefully connect our multimeter to the white wire, we can observe that when we press the out button, we indeed get 12 volts on the white wire. This is precisely what's going to enable us to control the solenoid through this compact module. With the invaluable information we've meticulously gathered from this experiment, along with the materials that came in the instructions, which aren't exactly comprehensive, at least we now know for certain that our remote's going to work perfectly with our reel. Furthermore, the connection's going to match up quite well with this somewhat sketchy diagram I've diligently whipped up. As we can see in the diagram, what we're gonna do is hook up our control box, first the power cable straight to the battery, and then the output cables. The yellow and the white ones from our control box, to the ones that match up with the up and down buttons on the solenoid. The specific order in which we select the yellow and white wires will accurately determine which button will be designated for moving up and down on the map. In our case, we just kinda picked at random which one's gonna be the up cable and which one's gonna be the down cable, so without sealing anything up, we'll hook the battery back up and head outside to check if it's working in the right order or if it's backwards. Looks like we goofed and it's all backwards, but hey, it's actually an easy fix. We simply swap the yellow and the white around and then give it another go. Looks like it's working fine, so let's go ahead and neatly tidy up the wires, get everything in place, stick the box somewhere safe, and then we'll put the cover back on that seals the deal. Once we've made sure everything's working right, we carefully put the chain back in its rightful place, and then we get the windlass going again. Finally, with the chain in place, we check that everything's working just fine. Looks like it's going up and looks like it's coming down just fine. Well done. Well, we've finally been testing out the remote for more than 3 years, and honestly, we've really liked the outcome, especially considering its price. It works like a charm. We've been pushing buttons from anywhere on the boat, getting in just fine, and the engine's running. One of the things I've really enjoyed is how exceptionally smooth it operates, without encountering any hitches whatsoever, unlike other controllers I've observed on the market, where you could actually see the chain kind of jerking along somewhat disruptively. Other than that, it's been great, honestly a fantastic solution. When we're using it from the cockpit, one of the perks is that since we've also got a camera mounted on top of the pole, which we'll show you how we rigged up sometime, we can also keep an eye on the anchor going down and coming up right from the cockpit through the tablet. So we've got everything under control without needing to be at the bow of the boat. Thanks a bunch for tuning in, folks. Hope y'all enjoyed today's video. If that's the case, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and y'all can check us out on our socials. Y'all can find all the links in the channel description. Stay tuned for new projects we'll be dropping on our socials.